everyone! Today I'll be drawing a portrait of my cowboy OC, Zachariah, and talking a little bit about my process for this piece, as well as some thoughts I have about starting this channel. So first, as you can see, I'm doing some thumbnails, and what I'm thinking about while I'm drawing these is I'm trying to figure out the composition, finding the best idea, and just kind of exploring it. I only really knew that I wanted to draw him with a frame behind him when I started, and you can see the idea kind of evolve to include him doing a card trick, which shows off a little bit more of his character and personality since he's a gambler and not exactly a very trustworthy one at that. Then I'm doing a little bit of refinement of the sketch from the thumbnail, and the frame gave me a lot of trouble. I don't usually draw like kind of ornate frames or anything like that, so I was struggling with the best way to approach it, and then I realized, oh, I only have to really sketch one half of it since it's symmetrical, which helped speed up that process a little bit. After I finish sketching the frame, I start working on sketching out Zachariah, building up the forms a little bit, getting down the basics of his design. I end up changing his expression. I kind of didn't like the direction I was taking him. He was looking a little bit too sinister. He's kind of a character that's up to no good, but he really tries to hide that behind a facade, and so I thought that having such a sort of smarmy expression didn't really match the way he would present himself, so I changed that later. Here you can see I pull up a reference photo of him. I initially designed him as an OC when I was first playing Red Dead Online, like forever ago, and I couldn't quite remember exactly how he looked, so I just wanted to pull up a little reference for his outfit. So at this point in the process, I'm kind of tweaking his arms, giving him some hair finally, and here's where I end up changing his expression to something that I was really quite happy with. Doing some last little finishing touches on the sketches, and finally addressing the playing cards. This part was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. You would think it would be easy, but for some reason I had a lot of difficulty like rotating the flat rectangles of the cards in 3D space. And I also had a lot of trouble with his hat. Hats are really hard to draw. I try not to draw them, but I really wanted to in this drawing, and kind of the whole theme of this is like, let's go a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So I wanted to draw a hat since I don't usually do that. Then I get into inking. Inking is usually my favorite part of the drawing process. I really enjoy it. I find it to be even a little bit meditative at times, but this frame was giving me so much trouble. I was getting very frustrated, and at one point I was like, maybe I should just give up on this whole illustration. This isn't working. But I stuck with it. I don't know why I was having so much trouble. Maybe it's just that I wasn't super familiar with what I was drawing, and I didn't have a ton of references for it, which, mistake. I should have brought up more references. I think it probably would have made it easier. But in the end, I managed to get the frame to look all right, and once I got into inking Zach himself, I felt a lot more confident, and the process kind of went how I was expecting it to go. So while I'm inking, I wanted to talk a little bit about starting this YouTube channel and why I want to start it. And basically, I've always really wanted to have a YouTube channel, but I've never done it because it kind of scares me to put my art out onto the internet. I often feel like my art isn't where I want it to be. Not that it's good or bad, it's just like it's not where I want it yet. And I think that that makes me get in my own way a lot. Instead of posting my art, I keep it to myself because I feel like, well, this isn't good enough for other people to see yet. And I think that that yet stops me from getting better, and it stops me from doing the things that I want, and that's not good. So I'm really trying to get out of my own way and let myself do the things that I want to do, even if maybe it's not going to be perfect the first few times I do it. My goal for this channel is really just to make some videos that I like, to share my art with people, to share my art journey and kind of track that as well so that I can see my improvement over time. Maybe I'll be able to share a little bit of what I know about art with you guys, and ultimately I just kind of hope that it can be a really positive experience both for my own learning and for everyone who stumbles across this channel's learning as well. Going back to the drawing itself, I've finished up the line art, and now I'm doing the flat color, putting in the plaid striping on the vest, working in a little bit of the planes of the face with some pretty simple shading. I decided to add that sort of band of bias tape on the edge of his hat, And then I go into doing the cards. I think that if I was going to do this illustration again, I would have spent a little bit more time on the cards. At the time of drawing, they didn't really feel very important, and so I rushed through them a little bit, thinking that his face would be the major focal point, but the cards are also a pretty big focal point, and they didn't totally come out in a way that I was super happy with. So I think if I was going to do it over again, I would have spent a little bit more time there. Now, with all of the flat color in place, I have moved on to doing the cell shading. I usually just do pretty harsh cell shading in my illustrations. I wanted to try something a little bit different. So you can see here I'm already starting to incorporate a little bit of blending into my shading, and I'll go forward and include a little bit more of that in the future as well. But for now, I'm just doing some flat cell shading. You can see I add a little bit more detail to the face. I add a little bit of a vignette behind the frame, and then once I'm done shading Zach, I go and give the frame a little bit of love. The frame is also an area where I probably could have spent more time, but because it is part of the background versus the cards, which are actually kind of in the foreground of the illustration, I think it ended up being fine that the shading on the frame wasn't very detailed. Then I go in and I do start doing some of that blending that I was talking about. I'm trying to blend away only the edges that really need to be soft. There is kind of like in painting a concept of soft and hard edges, and how certain edges, especially where a plane turns away very sharply from the light, you'll get a harder light, whereas other spots where maybe the transition between light and dark wouldn't be so harsh, you can kind of blend that out a little bit. So I tried to implement that as well as to just kind of create interesting shapes with the shading. Here I'm doing the lighting. I don't really like adding highlights to my work, but I think it really does sort of elevate the look and make it look a little bit more finished, so that's why I decided to do it here. I'm not totally convinced that my reasons for not liking highlights are reasonable. I think that I tend not to like them just because I don't really know what I'm doing, rather than not liking them because I actually don't like seeing them in my work. So I'm trying to force myself to use them a little bit more to see if I really truly don't like them in my style, or if I don't like them because I don't know what I'm doing. Now, at this point, I'm just kind of going in and painting over those cell shading layers, adding a little bit of warmth to some of the edges of the shadows, especially on his skin, where there would be subsurface scattering and sort of the blood showing through from beneath the skin. I also add a little bit of cool bounce light off of his jacket, and then into the shadows on his jacket, I add a little bit of the reddish purple color from the background, as if it was also adding bounce light into the illustration. I think that these last little finishing touches really kind of pull it all together. I go in and change the color of the line art, recrop the image, and we're done. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you'll stick around to catch some more videos from me in the future. Bye!